Call the Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting to order on this day, April 28th at 8:30 a.m. We begin our meeting with the pledge. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. Any adjustments to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll have a motion.
Madam Chair, motion to support the agenda as presented.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. At this time, we do offer a public comment period and an opportunity for citizens to appear before the board with anything they'd like to discuss. Is there anyone who'd like to come forward? Seeing none, we'll move on to has anyone on the board received any comments? Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda, which we have the claims, the minutes from the April 14th meeting, and then we have staff recognition and oath of office. So, motion to approve that?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
All in favor?
Support.
Support.
Gotta support. Who's supporting?
Ann.
Okay. All in favor?
Oh.
Okay, sorry.
So somebody's taking our minutes, I take it?
Yeah, Adrienne is at home, so am I. So.
Okay.
You're at
Okay.
home too?
No. So am I. No, she's taking them from there.
Okay.
I'm also.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Maybe I am.
So this morning, we have a couple recognitions. The first one, staff recognition, will be read by Administrator Treble.
All right, and if we could have Pat please come join us at the front here. Sheriff Lutsen. We'd like to recognize you today for your years of service. Sheriff Pat Eliason's career reflects more than 3 decades of steady, principled service to Cook County. Beginning his law enforcement journey in 1995 with the Grand Marais Police Department and soon after joining the Cook County Sheriff's Office, he built his career from the ground up, serving as a deputy, a leader within the ranks, and ultimately as sheriff beginning in 2015. As sheriff, Pat led with a clear commitment to professionalism, accountability, and respect for every individual. Under his leadership, the department modernized its practices with the implementation of body-worn cameras, expanded training, and strengthened its ability to serve the public. He also understood that public safety in Cook County depends on strong partnerships. Pat worked closely with the Grand Portage Band of Lake Superior Chippewa and other regional partners to establish a collaborative Marine unit, ensuring continued water safety after the closure of the Coast Guard station in Grand Marais. That effort stands as a lasting example of his commitment to collaboration and problem-solving across jurisdictions. That's just one example of the many different collaborations and partnerships that he has established. Throughout his career as a deputy, as chief deputy, and as sheriff, Pat earned the respect of his colleagues, the trust of the community, by emphasizing his teamwork and his service. He has supported his staff, strengthened relationships with partner agencies, and helped maintain the strong sense of community policing that defines Cook County. And beyond the badge, many in the community know Pat for another side of his character, his love of music. Whether with a guitar in hand or sharing a song, he has brought people together in a different but equally meaningful way, reminding us that public servants are also neighbors, friends, and part of the fabric of this community. Even in retirement from law enforcement, Pat will continue to serve. Through his work with Head Start in Grand Portage and through his own company, Sentinel, he remains committed to strengthening and supporting this community he has long called home. After 31 years in law enforcement, and actually I think we're 3 months short of 31 years, if I'm not mistaken, but almost 31 years, the sheriff leaves a legacy of dedication, collaboration, and steady leadership. His impact will be felt not only within the sheriff's office, but across the entire community that he has served, and will continue to serve us, but in different ways. So with that, we thank you for your leadership.
We'd like you to sing your response, please.
Well, thank you for that. That was fantastic. Just to clarify, the 31 years was 31 years in February was when I started with the Grand Marais Police Department.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
it would have been 31
Yes.
years with the county in September.
Yeah, a long time.
Yes, a long time. If I may, I'd like to read something.
Please.
Chairperson, Commissioners, County Administration, and members of the Cook County team, as I come before you at my final Board of Commissioners meeting as Sheriff, I want to take a few moments to simply say thank you. Serving as the Cook County Sheriff has been one of the greatest honors of my life. Over the past 31 years in law enforcement, including the last 12 as your Sheriff, I've had the privilege of working alongside incredible people who care deeply about this county and the people who call it home. I want to thank the Board of Commissioners for your support, guidance, and willingness to work through difficult issues together. Public service is not always easy, and there have certainly been challenges along the way, but I have always appreciated the respect and professionalism shown throughout my time serving in this role. I also want to thank the county administration team, department heads, and staff across all county departments. No one accomplishes anything alone in county government. The work we do depends on teamwork, communication, and a shared commitment to serving the public. I have always been proud of the relationships we built and the way we work together to support the residents of Cook County. To the men and women of the Cook County Sheriff's Office, dispatch, jail staff, emergency management, and everyone who has worn the badge or supported this office, thank you. Your hard work, sacrifice, professionalism, and dedication have meant more to me than I can ever fully express. I have been fortunate to work with some truly outstanding people over the years. I am also grateful to the citizens of Cook County for placing their trust in me. It has been a privilege to serve this community, and I will always carry that responsibility with pride and gratitude. While this chapter is coming to an end, I leave knowing that Cook County is in good hands. I'm proud of what we have accomplished together, proud of the relationships we have built, and proud to have spent my career in service to this county. Thank you all for your support, your trust, and your friendship over the years. It has truly been an honor.
And Pat will be back with one last request later.
Yes.
we have to hang
that's
around?
You're not done yet.
Okay, Ben, if I'd have you come up and sit at the seat there by the microphone, please. So I have some opening remarks, Ben, and then we'll have a swearing in. Today, we recognize a significant moment in transition and continuity in the Cook County Sheriff's Office. Ben Hellberg has been dedicated more than 2 decades to the service of this community through the Sheriff's Office. Beginning his career in 2004 as a dispatcher and jailer, he has served in a wide range of roles, including deputy sheriff, jail administrator, dispatch supervisor, and currently chief deputy. His work has included overseeing day-to-day operations at the Sheriff's Office, supporting jail and dispatch functions, serving as the DARE officer in local schools, and working closely with local and regional law enforcement partners across northeastern Minnesota. In each of these roles, he's demonstrated a steady commitment to the public safety, professional service, and community trust. So today, in accordance with the actions of the Cook County Board, Ben assumes the responsibility of interim sheriff until the elected sheriff is sworn in January 2027. So I'll ask him to come forward.
Get him on camera.
Have you raise your right hand, please, and repeat after me. I, Ben Halbert,
I, Ben Halbert,
do swear and affirm
do swear and affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will be diligent, faithful, and impartial
and that I will be diligent, faithful, and impartial
in the performance of the duties
in the performance of the duties
of sheriff for the County of Cook,
of the Sheriff of the County of Cook,
in the state of Minnesota
in the state of Minnesota
to the best of my judgment and ability
to the best of my judgment and ability
and in accordance with the law.
and in accordance with the law.
So congratulations, Sheriff Hellberg. You're now duly sworn as the interim sheriff of Cook County. Your service record reflects a deep operational experience within this office, from dispatch and corrections to leadership as chief deputy. You have helped guide the daily operations of the sheriff's office, supported your colleagues in the field and in the jail, and strengthened relationships across the region's law enforcement and community. This appointment recognizes not only your experience, but also the stability and continuity needed to serve the people of Cook County during this transition period. We thank you for stepping up into this responsibility and for your continued commitment to public safety and the people of this county. This appointment will remain in effect until elected sheriff assumes office in January 2027. On behalf of Cook County, we thank you for your leadership and service. So the next item on our agenda would be to call Patty Lutsen up with his request. Marine Vessel MOU.
Thank you, everybody. So just to recap a little bit, we worked with Grand Portage to get a couple of boats to replace the hole that the Coast Guard left for us on the north shore of Lake Superior. 4 boats were procured. Grand Portage kept 2 of them. They gave us 1, and they gave Lake County 1, so we could have the entire north shore ready to respond to whatever needs in Lake Superior. In doing so, Grand Portage requested an MOU with Cook County for not just the use of the boat, but for returning the boat if we ever decide that we do not want the vessel any longer. So County Attorney Peterson was kind enough to draw up the agreement. We looked it over. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and if you have any questions or whatever, I will sit here and answer.
Commissioner White?
For the listening public, I know this one. What is an MOU?
Memorandum of Understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gabel?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This pursuit of replacing the Coast Guard provision that was in place for the county that began, at least with some strong focus, 2024 or 2023, would you say?
I would, boy, that's a good question, but it's been a while. I'd say 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it appears that Grand Portage took the lead in pursuing the funding, and maybe the avenue that they could pursue was such that it made it more realistic to be able to acquire these funds to purchase these 4 boats. And there's been discussion since that time, I'm sure, as we've looked to try to replace the Coast Guard provision. And so I apologize if some of the questions that I have been questions that have been brought before this board and the community so that we're aware of these. And if you'll indulge me in your last day before you take your flak jacket off, these are some questions that I would have. And especially looking at the brand of understanding that any relationship, and we've had relationships certainly in law enforcement with the city and with other organizations, and being clear under that understanding and what expectation, as long as that's defined clearly in that memorandum of understanding, it prevents misunderstanding and surprises. I would ask initially if a memorandum of understanding has been established with Lake County and has come before their board and been passed, if you're aware of that or not.
It has.
It has, okay.
Yes.
And the language is similar to the language being proposed today?
Very, very similar, yes.
Okay. And so one of my questions is that who will staff the vessel?
Well, we have two, our current jail administrator and one of our deputies have either finished or are just finishing up their captain's licenses to run the vessel. Obviously, they can't do it by themselves, but we would have, staff from the sheriff's office, staff from search and rescue, depending on what the incident is that we're responding to out on Lake Superior. But we will have two certified captains to run the vessel.
Okay. And so looking at a vessel this size and nature and patterned after Coast Guard vessels, that minimum requirement would be 2 in this regard, and depending upon the nature of the search and rescue mission, potentially 3. And again, looking at what certification or licensing is required, again, relative to this type of vehicle, and you mentioned that training has been in place. Some of that training and results of that, the timeline until you get that certification can be put out, a number of days. So this is something, when I look at it, if I say, here's our plan, here's the memorandum of understanding, here's what we have looked at on this, and so this is the plan that's put in place, that we're in compliance, and that, we'll be able to meet the requirements associated with this type of service, this type of vessel. The other question I have is the monies that came initially, the $3 million, those monies that Grand Portage had acquired, those were applied for the purchase, or was there a point of that, given the price point of where that half of that money is going towards maintenance or ongoing operations?
The money was used for the purchase, and whatever was left over, we had initially assumed we could use that for staff wages. If we wanted to try to get some seasonal people to come up and do that specifically during the summer. It turned out that we cannot use that money for wages. It's to be used for equipment, maintenance, things like that, yes.
Okay. And so there is some funding that would be available that, and if looking at, again, that type of vehicle, what expectations are relative to maintenance, that in the memorandum of understanding, unless I missed it, that isn't necessarily detailed as who will take the financial responsibility of that. This partnership between Grand Portage and Lake County and Cook County is a team approach to replacement of services that we no longer have. But the financial component of it is what I'm wanting to know, and I don't necessarily see that spelled out clearly in the memorandum.
Well, I think as far as, the operations of the vessel, if you, for fuel, oil, equipment, things like that, I think the sheriff's office would be responsible for supplying that. I mean, we have different grants that we can use for that specific purpose. We have the State of Minnesota Boat and Water Grant can be used for anything in that area. If you're talking about like a major breakdown, like a motor or a hole in the hull or something like that, I don't know, to be honest.
Okay. And the other question I'd have that's in line with that is, are you aware of any warranty that has been provided in making that purchase, with those warranties being negotiated based upon individual purchase? I'm just wondering if we have anything in that regard.
I recall a warranty, and I think it's just a standard warranty for any vessel that the company that made the boat, and they're called Lake Assault boats out of Superior, Wisconsin. I'm pretty sure that their warranty is pretty much boilerplate across any vessel that they sell to anybody.
Yeah, and part of that knowledge is just to protect us when we're doing projections, and when we know that type of boat, how it served us, and typical things that you might run into it. The other is who insures the vessel? And have we checked with our insurance provider to see whether or not the nature of the service we provide is covered under that, or if we have to have a specialized marine service associated with the use of the vehicle or the vessel?
That's a good question, and I don't have an answer for you.
Okay. And then the other question is, you mentioned about the certification and licensing that is going on with staff. And then in your presentation, and I didn't see it in the 2026 budget, was any of this designated for the costs associated with this program?
No, just because like I'd mentioned before, that we will more than likely use our boat and water funds that we get from the state of Minnesota to supply fuel,
Yeah.
oil, lines, life jackets, and anything like that.
Yeah.
We get a decent amount from the state each year for our boat and water program. And many years, we never really use that grant up, so it would be a good use for those monies.
Is that Stone Garden?
No, it's something,
Okay.
the different grants we get at the sheriff's office, yes, we get Stone Garden. We also get a state of Minnesota boat and water grant. We get a
Yeah.
state of Minnesota ATV grant. We get a state of Minnesota, I just lost my train of thought now.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get many grants, which we can utilize for equipment, for operational costs, anything like that.
Yeah. I would imagine that the Coast Guard discontinued service, not necessarily from an assessment that the need doesn't exist, but more from a financial standpoint, that the cost that they were incurring, that they had to prioritize as to where they were going to have a presence. When we, and I'm making assumption there, but when we take a look at it, if we say where we're going to replace that service, then we're going to look at all these component parts in order to find out how will we continue that. We had a van that was donated to us in Public Health Human Services, which it was great to have that as a transportation option for our community, but we did not have a plan or funding or staffing and these components. And so it seems in some regards that answering all of the questions that are a component of providing this service, that we need to be assured that in fact we have it. There's no question that the need exists, and there's no question that the initiative that Grand Portage took is to our benefit. It's just looking at it from the standpoint of how we have put these various pieces together to make sure that there's no surprises is the big component. So in the 31 years that you've served and all of the challenges that you alluded to generically, how does this compare? It's a great opportunity, and it was mentioned in our recognition that this is something that you partnership with Grand Portage and be able to facilitate. It just looking at the practical side of the financial side of it, and in my comparison with the van that was made available to Public Health Human Services, it was great to get the van, but we haven't been able to use the van because we didn't have an effective plan that was thorough in its evaluation moving forward. So I appreciate your responses, but
Well, I think we have an effective plan. I mean, like I said, we'll have two certified captains. We have funds to supply the boat with needed items. Funds to put fuel in the boat for when we need to go out on Lake Superior, and so I think we have a plan. I mean, it's still a working plan. There's no doubt about that.
yeah.
But we do have some of the pieces of the puzzle put in already.
All right, thank you, Pat. Brady, do you happen to know anything relative to insurance, MCI?
Not offhand, I just sent him an email.
Okay.
I may get an answer before the end of the meeting.
Yeah, in my understanding, there's a specialized marine insurance, and so oftentimes when we step into an area that hasn't been our responsibility, it's making sure that our insurance is in place to handle that, so, thank you.
I can add to the insurance piece, which is, Brady, I had had a conversation with Adriana regarding adding this to the policy, and I believe that the vessel has been added to the policy. That doesn't answer all the questions that you had, but we do know that that piece has been taken care of.
Okay. And so in checking in that particular area, that the response on that given the scope and the nature of what we're doing, that the insurance is fine in that regard?
I can't answer that. What
Okay.
I
That's what I
can
would
say is
expect.
that's what Brady has emailed MCIT regarding, I believe, correct?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
just to see if there's anything special about it.
yeah,
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, we put it on the schedule, but
yeah. In my understanding that it is a specialized, and I know just insurance for entities that whenever something sort of steps outside of the broad understanding of the provision that's in place, it's just getting an opinion that we know, in fact, we are covered. And so just, it's a question. So thank you. I appreciate your responses.
Attorney Peterson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in response to the maintenance questions, Commissioner, because this governs the understanding, but that it is actually a gift to the county, excuse me, the presumption would be that the county is responsible for the maintenance of the vessel. If there are funds available from the band and they deem it in the best interest of all of the parties to the MOU, certainly they could assist with any of the maintenance, but the presumption would be that we are responsible for maintaining this generous gift from the band.
Yeah. Madam Chair, follow up, appreciate that. I would just say again, looking at a program that the overall maintenance cost is certainly significant, and it can run from $20,000 to $100,000 on a vessel like that. We learn from other people's experiences. We certainly learn from when we make a purchase on a vehicle. Oftentimes, we're evaluating the history of that manufacture, that vehicle, to know that it is an investment that not only provides the service but provides the reliability that we're looking at, so maintenance costs don't end up being an issue. And we see in the highway department facilities that oftentimes our decisions are based upon the evaluation of maintaining, and it gets to a point where then we have to make different decisions because it's costing too much to maintain. So it is a point of evaluation. Who takes responsibility for it is something that I would think in a plan would be defined. And given the fact that we've been talking about this for a couple of years at least, I would have seen, while it might be an unknown, I would have expected to see it as a commissioner in ratifying the 2026 budget, a component of that, or at least an explanation of that, if you understand what I'm saying. And so it's not an intention to be a stick in the spokes in regard to this, but it is from the standpoint of the management and being clear so that the public is aware of all the component parts. We can be excited about what we get, but we want to be sure that we've anticipated and measured these things. So that's the reason for the discussion.
Commissioner White?
Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Do we want to go without a boat out there and rely on our local fishermen? No. So whatever it costs to maintain this gift, to keep our public safe, that is just the cost of doing business. And I don't believe that, I believe we were very fortunate. We did a stint without the Coast Guard, which was not, did we have 2 or 3 different saves that had to be done while the Coast Guard was gone? And so whatever it costs, I have every, I don't know, who does your work, who does the maintenance on the boats? Somebody in Superior? It wouldn't be our highway department.
No,
But anyway, whatever it is, the value of having our own boats out there in the harbor to save people is invaluable. And 2, the question I originally had is, staff that's going out, do you practice saving people or saving boats? I'm just curious, like you have a disabled boat, do you practice hauling one in or?
Yes, the 2 individuals who have gone to captain school and some of the search and rescue members have taken Coast Guard training, yes.
Okay, that was my big question.
I would have to give a little short background on all this. When we found out in late '22 that Coast Guard was pulling out, I gathered a group of people with Pat, and we said we have to do something about this. It especially is hard and difficult in Grand Portage area when they go out and find people trying to paddle a canoe to Isle Royale or to get on any kind of other mode of transportation. We sent letters requesting support from the director of Isle Royale, Senator Klobuchar, Senator Smith, and it's taken all this long for them and other people to respond for money for the boats, and then to also have included Lake County too. And the safety of people even being on the shore of Lake Superior is detrimental, as we had somebody who died last year, result of a large wave, let alone somebody being in a vessel and needing help and nobody's there to help them. So I, along with Commissioner White, say in the matter of safety and everything, we need to support this because it's of utmost importance. Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, and I agree with both what you're saying, and I think to Commissioner Gamble's point, it's more of just understanding. I don't think Commissioner Gamble is saying we shouldn't do it, but we need to have a broader understanding of the operations. But I guess the qualification I would just put there is we've kind of been waiting for a long time, A, for money and then also for the vessel, and so we can't, or it's like, where do you put your energy with limited resources? Do you put it towards something you're not sure when and if it's going to be procured, or do you focus on other things that are happening that are very real and tangible challenges? So yes, we do need that, but I did not expect to have a boat for 2026, so that's why I wouldn't have thought it to be in the budget. But for 2027, absolutely, we need to understand what the operations and costs and maintenance would be. So I think we're all on a very similar page, just looking for more details.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the discussion, and again, it's a process of understanding our responsibility, both in service to the community and fiscal responsibility, and at looking at the dollar figure. So, to Commissioner White's point and the discussion, we certainly understand what we lost and the risk that we inherited as a result of the loss of the Coast Guard. The evaluation of our response to it, how we meet that both in the service and in being able to manage it through budget is the question. So we've talked about this as a board, that when it comes to looking at our budget process, a matter of prioritizing. And so if we feel that this moves up because of the nature of the service provided, it moves up in that priority rank, we assign limited dollars based upon our evaluation of priority. And that is my point. If we have the component parts that allow us as decision makers to know the elements that are involved in this service relative to fiscal responsibility, we are in a better position to weigh benefit and priority against limited dollars. And that's the whole point of my discussion. So.
Commissioner White?
Well, we could just go to how many people might we save on? Let's look at EMS, the budget, and then the boat. How many people would we save with the boat compared to the EMS services? And so we would save more with EMS. So if it's only going to be 3 or 4 people, maybe we don't need a boat. That's an absurdity, of course. But yes, I'm so grateful to Grand Portage that we have it. And I'm assuming all the insurances by our insurance people will be figured out, and we will get trained people out there, and no one will drown on Lake Superior. Maybe other places, but not Lake Superior.
And again, Madam Chair, and to Commissioner Mills' point, I'm not trying to be an adversary against it. I'm just trying to say this is an experience that we have as decision makers that is an opportunity for us to learn both of the opportunity but the fiscal responsibility that comes with us. And we've talked about sometimes things coming before the board that are requests for significant dollars that we don't have enough information on. We don't have all the component parts. It's very difficult to be a steward of something you know very little about. And that's why in the beginning of my comments, I'm commenting about the fact that I apologize if there's components that have been addressed in this area when I was not sitting on the board as a decision maker. So I do appreciate the conversation, and it's an exercise that we will continue to have to deal with when we have requests, so.
Commissioner
It's
Mills?
just another parallel regarding the PHHS van. There was a working plan with that and staff as well, and partnerships with other organizations. But unfortunately, there's a lot of turnover and again, prioritizing resources. And so, say for instance, at the sheriff's office, both captains left. It could be a similar situation, and so you have to adapt and work through those things.
Sure.
And
I understand.
can't predict it all, but I hear you, I think, on your point of needing a better picture overall. And we'll get that. We'll work through it.
Commissioner White?
Well, we're making the sheriff's last meeting memorable, and he's really going to want to get out of here.
Can't let them off easy, but, yeah.
Enough of this conversation. So thank you very much, and he won't take the boat with him, I'm sure.
No, I can't.
Do you want to make a motion?
No.
Could I mention
Oh, he
something?
wants to say
Chair-
something.
Yes,
Chairperson?
go ahead.
I would say, I was just thinking while this conversation was going on, that we already do, water activities, water rescues with our search and rescue folks and with our sheriff's office. So I'm just gonna guess that is probably covered underneath the county's insurance at some point. So I just wanted to get that out there so we could think about that aspect as well.
Activity is not brand new.
Yeah.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adopt and sign the memorandum of understanding between Cook County and the Grand Portage Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa.
I'll support that.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Pat.
Thanks, everybody.
Next item, number 7 on our agenda is Community Center Extension.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Before you today, we have a proposal to accept a donation of an outdoor AED cabinet that will be placed at the community center. I'm here with Chris Smith, who's from the Arrowhead AED organization, which is a newly formed nonprofit that is helping to fundraise and promote these outdoor accessible AED cabinets. AED stands for Automatic External Defibrillator, which is a machine that can be used when somebody's having a cardiac arrest to restart their heart. We already, of course, have one of these located inside the community center. However, it is not accessible after 4 p.m. or on weekends, which is when many activities are happening at the community center. You can see in your notes from our proposal the exact location of where we're proposing this would be placed, and it would greatly expand accessibility to this life-saving technology 24/7. So the features of the cabinet are that it's similar to kind of like a vending machine. It keeps the AED from freezing and protected from the elements. Because of that, it requires hookup to electricity. That's why we're going to locate it on the back of the building where it'll be easy to add that electrical hookup. And in that location, it faces a lot of the outdoor campus amenities such as the tennis courts and the playgrounds, the hockey rink, and is nearby to the ball field as well. Arrowhead AED is offering to donate both the cabinet and the AED machine, as well as the first 4 years of the maintenance and data plan that would be associated with this technology. After those first 4 years, the county could elect to continue paying for that maintenance and data plan ourselves. If we decided not to pay for that plan from the company that it's coming from, the machine and the cabinet would still work. We would just have to manually check on it like we check on our other AEDs that we have indoors. And it wouldn't have the same feature of when somebody opens the door with this data plan, it can send a message via text to a preset list of phone numbers. So
Calls 911.
yeah. So if we didn't have that plan after the 4 years, it would be just like our indoor AEDs, somebody would be able to open it and use it. So the vast majority of the cost of this addition is being generously covered by this local nonprofit. The county would be in charge of adding the electricity outlet to be able to hook up the machine, and a very minimal amount of our labor for installing, as well as the cost of the electricity to run the cabinet, which is estimated to be about $25 per year. We'll stop there and ask if you have any questions about the proposal.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So a question I would have is just because it's located outside, is that hookup, that connection, if we're going to make that connection, if there's something that is a security measure relative to that connection so that it can't be disabled.
Yeah, it's not just like I don't understand all the electricity stuff, but it's not just like a power cord you plug in, it's like hooked up.
It's direct wired, hardwired, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just a question I had if somebody
Well,
just.
and also for even vandalism, it's got a camera on it. And
Yeah.
it even says on the machine, smile, you're on camera.
Yeah.
So that if someone takes it and drives to Bemidji with it, we know where it's at.
Yeah, yeah.
With this plan.
Yeah, yeah. It's great. And we often wonder, where's the money coming from? But when when organizations step up and help out like that, it's greatly appreciated.
Administrator Treble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to add that thank you to Chris Smith and to Sarah. Chris reached out to me several months ago regarding this idea and has worked very hard to make this happen for the county. So I just want to say we appreciate your work and the effort that you've put into this.
And this is just one. I plan to be here many times, so.
No.
I think we're off to a good start.
Commissioner White?
Begs the question, what's the cost of one of these units? This unit, the prices will rise, I get this, but.
Yeah, it's listed in the packet. So the outdoor cabinet itself is $4,600. The AED machine to go in it is $3,100. The data plan for 4 years is $400, and the maintenance plan for 4 years is $537.
And can I add with the maintenance plan, what that does is then our maintenance, or the maintenance company, when it's used, they will come up right away, they will maintain it, they will replace the pads, so that's part of the maintenance. So there really isn't much cost. And after the 4 years, my goal with this nonprofit is to keep it going for the rest of my life. So after the 4 years is up, come back to us, hey, our 4 years is up. Can we apply for, maybe we can keep paying for so it just depends on what we can fund and what we can raise. But our long-term goal would be that basically wouldn't cost anybody much money, but maybe the electricity for that. So it's kind of a.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I make a motion to approve the donation of the outdoor AED cabinet along with the AED device and 4 years of monitoring and maintenance plan from Arrowhead AED to Cook County.
Support.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go right now to item A on maintenance, and after that, we're going down to item 11, because we have two representatives waiting in the audience to discuss their request. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just coming today for approval to replace a old lawnmower we have.
something we budgeted for a few years, and this year we have the funds to take care of it with the CapEx. Any questions?
Gary?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair,
Campbell?
appreciate it.
Actually, out of questions for today, Gary?
So, looking at the budget that you proposed to us under supplies, small equipment, I'm assuming this comes under the capital purchases line item?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, and we saw a significant ask this year. You must have been feeling your oats at the time that you came to make this request.
Yeah.
With a 1,250% increase in that particular line item, which amounts to $100,000, which is just under and bordering on 1% of levy. But, so maybe it just felt like it was a good year to try to catch up. You came and you got that Bobcat?
Yep, that came in significantly under what we had initial thought the purchase price was.
Right,
And this had been budgeted last year.
right.
But with the price increases, we didn't have the extra $4,000. They'd only budgeted $10,000 for the
Yeah.
purchase of the new lawnmower last year.
Yeah.
So with the extra we had from the purchase of the Bobcat and then the $10,000 we had budgeted.
Makes this possible.
Yeah.
So does that pretty much take care of that amount of money, or will we see something else this being April? As far as that budget?
No, there'll be some left over, but I don't have any other purchases planned.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I always appreciate if we have made a decision to affirm a budget request, and then you come and you fulfill, what that indication is, then it's a lot easier than coming in with a surprise wasn't
Yeah.
included in the budget ask, so
Yep.
I appreciate that. So I'd make a motion to support the purchase of the Toro 74059 60-inch 4000Z riding mower as provided for in the budget.
I'll support that.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Madam
Thank you
Chair.
on
Thanks,
that.
Commissioners.
Thank you.
Just to let Land Services know, I'm postponing you for a little bit because we have, we're going down to item number 11, the loan to Town of Lutsen for rescue truck. So we have Supervisor Hamiak and Fire Chief Duclos. For the last couple months, we've been discussing the need for this, and they have put together a packet on that. Supervisor Hamiak has been working with Brady, and I'll turn it over to Brady if he has any opening comments.
No, Madam Chair, you did it quite well. I'll let them go ahead and speak.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Brady, for your help with this. We are here today to request the county's help with a loan to purchase a new Rosenbauer rescue truck for the Lutsen Fire and EMS. The loan would be in the total of $306,501. That is 75% of the purchase. The township would cover the other 25%. And this would be a loan, not a grant. So, open to discussing terms and how that may work. We have in the past received a loan from Cook County for the construction of our town hall, and so looking for something similar. Our goal would be to at least have a preliminary yay or nay, or at least an idea so that we can sign a contract. The build process for this truck is about 600 days. So we're looking at least the end of next year. Have anything you'd like to add?
The need for this truck it's pretty obvious in our department. Right now, all of our, what we'd call rescue stuff, whether it be the Jaws of Life, ropes, things like that, they're spread out amongst all the trucks. And this is really gonna help consolidate things, makes our job easier and better care for patients, things like that. We have, one of our trucks also is what we call the brush truck, a wildland truck. So when that gets called out with, say, the Forest Service or the DNR, we have to take a bunch of equipment off there that we might need if we get another call when that truck goes out, and that truck might be gone for a day. So it's just trying to make our jobs better so we can better serve the community.
One of the things that, if all of you are familiar with your fire departments, know that things happen suddenly. And at the township meeting this month, it was requested for $500 and they needed it right now. So, you know, your budget just keeps fluctuating, and the request for things immediately is, okay, we don't have time to really see if we can afford it, we have to do it. So that's why they need a little bit of help right now. So, Commissioner Gamble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brady, do we have anything, I mean, you mentioned the loan for the town hall. Do we have a policy that defines rate and term, or is it something that we negotiate?
It was in the packet for volunteer fire departments. The policy passed in 2012, said a 1%
Okay.
rate for over 100,000.
And the term,
20 years,
20 years?
20 years maximum.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I think it's 25.
25, okay.
Oh, that's 25. Okay, so the discussion, obviously, coming in when you come to the county, that you know the terms under which, you know, you're
Yeah.
approaching us, and it was identified that if the county doesn't provide it, then you'd have to look elsewhere, which wouldn't be as favorable. So the only question I had is relative to, so the public is aware of the term and the basis under which it is, so we can come alongside and help in that regard, but everybody's clear on what the arrangement is, so.
But the thing to think about is that's a 14-year-old policy. Interest rates have changed dramatically.
Yeah.
We've changed our policy on what we're charging recently
Yeah.
on another.
Yeah.
So I think this policy is ripe for some discussion.
Yeah,
too.
and you probably know more than we know, and that's why you hit us while we were down, so to speak, but.
Yeah.
No, we were not planning that far ahead or looking at the age of that policy. We just know that it's something
Yeah.
that the county has helped with in the past. And
Sure.
so
Yeah, and this is obviously how we partnership in providing the services that are needed within our community, and I think that the community as a whole certainly agrees that providing these services is important, but to the point, reevaluating policy to make sure it's current, and we're attempting to do that in a lot of fronts, so thank you.
Yeah. The other thing we haven't discussed regarding this is just how much of our fund balance is available for things like this. We've put $500,000 set aside for the Ag BMP program because of that. And there may be other requests to come forward. And we have a very changed policy regarding the use of our available fund balance that changed in 2020. So that comes after this policy, which is very dated. So you may want to discuss, I would think, some of these things.
And to that point, Brady, I would say that keeping us appraised, because a lot of times we discuss it in the budget cycle, but we don't necessarily discuss it as we go through the year. But if we were to look since the beginning of 2026, the amount that we have taken from that reserve fund, we did with EDA, 200,000. So if you look at it, and just letting us know so that we're not thinking that it's free money that is there every time a request comes before. So again, in a previous conversation, it's a balance between our fiscal responsibility and meeting need, and we need to have the discipline through evidence-based budgeting that shows that we're good stewards of taxpayer money. So appreciate the conversation.
Administrator Travel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to remind the board that at our last work session, we did talk about county loans. And so I just pulled up the minutes from that discussion. And we did discuss, Brady and I working together to update the loan policy and to look at the interest rate terms. And we talked about also if there should be a match, and should we cap how much we have out, providing out in loans to ensure that our fund balance remains where it needs to be as well, and creating criteria for applying, or for those applying for for these funds as well. And so just to make sure the board remembers that discussion as you consider this request before you. The one question I would have is just related to fund balance. Can you share some information about your current fund balance for the Lutsen Fire Department?
Yes, so currently, we have $327,000 as of our last meeting in our truck fund. That fund was set up a number of years ago with the intention of sending money aside every year out of our fire and township levies to help support any large vehicle maintenance, breakdowns, or the possible future purchase. When you look at current cost of a fire engine or tender or even these rescue vehicles, you're talking $500,000 for a rescue vehicle more often than not. For a fire engine or tender, you're talking over $1 million. So that truck fund at $327,000 seems like a fair chunk of change, but when you're talking about $1 million truck, it's a little more than what you would need just for a down payment. And so right now, like I said, we have $327,000. Our goal is to use a little less than a third of that. I believe it was 167. And that would be a quarter of this purchase, leaving a little over $200,000 as our emergency reserve. Because if we were to have any large mechanical breakdown, even to refurbish a fire engine or a tender, it's $50,000 to $60,000 to refurbish to keep it in service. If you have a large pump breakdown, engine breakdown, or other issues that are not covered by insurance, you could easily be at $100,000. And if it was something where it was out of service completely, that remainder in that truck fund would then be used for going after a loan to replace that vehicle. And so that's where our funds are at currently.
Chris, can you talk about any grants that you may have looked at, things that may be available for fire vehicles, federal or state?
Yep, so through FEMA, there is a fire assistance grant. I don't know if it's specifically for rural departments or not. We have in the past applied for that grant. It's highly competitive. We applied for that 2 years ago when we replaced all of our air packs to the cost of $110,000, and we did not receive it then. And so that grant is one that we will go after again when that application period opens. The reason why the ask is what it is right now is because we can't bank on receiving any grants, because most of these are highly competitive. Even at the state level, there are grants, but they're $1,000 to $5,000. They're small. At the federal level, they're much larger, but they're much more competitive. Our plan is to apply for anything and everything that we can find, like we did with our drone purchase, which will be a conversation at a later date. But we've been applying for grants. We've received a few for our drone purchase as well as other equipment at the township level. We have a fairly, how would you describe Sharon as a grant writer?
Awesome.
We have a very awesome grant writer in Sharon Hexenplatzer, and she is always looking for grants and willing to write them. So we are going to continue to look for grants, but as of right now, we know of 2. We will be applying when those application windows are open, but for this purchase and be able to sign a contract, we kind of need to know that at least we have funding. And if we were to receive grants, that would then offset the total amount that we're requesting in financing.
Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, there's a question I was going to have as you were talking that in pursuit of grants and the ask that's coming before us, given the amount of time it takes to get this, truck manufactured, that you have the option to reduce the amount that you're asking for based upon the findings But in order to put the order in, you need to have the assurances that you're going to have the monies there. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the resourcefulness in trying to secure monies in multiple ways.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Either Chris or Steve maybe could answer this. I know to the public it seems like a huge amount of money, but I also know that these trucks have a very long lifespan. Can you talk a little bit about the lifespan of one of these?
Yeah, so current NFPA standards, so like our engine, our tenders, they have a 20-year lifespan, and at that point, we can replace them or we can refurbish them. We just refurbished our engine about 6 years ago. That gives us another 20 years. And our tenders due, I think, in about 3 years to be refurbished. And as Chris was mentioning, that's gonna be about $50,000. It's a lot cheaper than a new truck, of course. You know, this rescue truck's not gonna carry any water or anything like that, so it doesn't quite fall under the same parameters as NFPA guidelines. But it'll last a long time. I mean, you think about the hours or the miles that we put on them, it's pretty minimal. Even our engine, I think, is a 2005, and again, we were just talking that in 15 years, we'll probably refurbish that again, with keeping in mind in 30 years, we're gonna have to buy a new engine at that point, just given the date of it. So they do last a long time.
All right, well, thank you for that information. I think that if the public realizes the type of expenditure that is being made over many, many years, there's a better understanding of the value of this expenditure.
Commissioner Mills?
Okay, so the vehicle fund, the truck fund, is important, I understand, in case there's a catastrophic failure in a vehicle or a truck. And it sounds like the one was just refurbished 6 years ago, and then in 3 years we'll have another one to refurbish. So what I'm wondering is what is more likely. I'm just trying to weigh fund balance options and how to best use the fund balances that both we have and what you guys have, and I have to trust in you and your operations and, you know, keeping your fund balance healthy and active and all that, and what best practice is, because that's out of my wheelhouse. One of the questions I was wondering about, and I know the mutual aid where, I mean, in here it's, you know, state and feds, but also any other fire department in the county, right? You guys all work together. What I was curious about was if there's a comprehensive truck plan, because, you know, if you know, 4 or 5 fire departments come asking for a $300,000 loan, we can't do that with our fund balance. And so I can see a lot of benefit. I can also see the extreme hurdle that would be to coordinate all the departments. But it would really help me better understand what our community's needs are in regards to those capital purchases, which, as you pointed out, are significant. So I'm not at all against this, but I would like to try to coordinate more, both with maybe other departments, but I was really curious, like, I understand that grants are very competitive and probably don't want to hold our breath on those. But I was really curious if there was like Minnesota Fire Department loans, you know, you would hope that the state would provide a lower interest than a commercial loan for these types of purchases. I'm certain there are other communities, rural communities, that have similar challenges. So I would like to explore more options, but I understand the need, and I don't know what the best path is to figure all this out timing-wise, you know, because of that 600-day build-out. But wanted to throw that out there for further thoughts and discussion.
Okay. Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Mills. When we're in the budget cycle and the fire departments come in and make their requests, how much communication goes on inter-fire department within the county, some of the buying power we get if we have buying power, you know, with various counties that are doing something. I mean, when facilities purchases through the state site, or just looking at, you know, ways that you can try to get more for your dollar kind of thing, that's a healthy discussion. And we, you know, where we sit, we don't know how much that goes on when you're talking to Hovland or, you know, up the trail relative to these things, and whether there's the feasibility of even having equipment that is usable throughout the county, given how large our county is. So if somebody is like farmers, somebody would buy the harvester, somebody would buy the tiller, and, you know what I'm saying? And then when it came to season, they would share that equipment. But we are in a position to want to understand, which is what your question raised, but certainly you know more and you can help inform us in that regard, just to see. And we learn from what you inform us about as to how you approach these things with these big purchases, so.
Well, so what I can speak to is that there is the meeting every month of the Fire Chiefs Association.
Every other month.
Or sorry, every other month. You would know more on that. But as far as I know, there's not a comprehensive plan across all the departments. When you look at Cook County, there are 9 departments. When you look at fire halls alone, there are 12 or 13 throughout the county, because you have to look at Maple Hill having 2, Gunflint Trail having 3. Yes, there are definitely resources throughout the county. Everybody has something different. Colville has a heavy rescue for vehicles. The Hovland has the stop team. Grand Marais and Tofty both have aerial trucks, so ladder trucks with either platform or nozzles at the top of that ladder available for rescue. So all of the departments have various parts and pieces, and like you said, there are mutual aid agreements amongst all of them. As far as I know, like I said, though, I don't believe there is a comprehensive plan amongst all the departments, and that would be difficult to do looking at how everything's organized. It's my understanding that Hovland, Colville, Gunflint Trail, and Maple Hill don't have the ability to levy funds on their own. I believe that they do it through, in part with the county, correct?
And also through fundraising.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
Whereas
yeah.
Lutsen, Tofty, and Schroeder are all townships and have the various
Ability to
fire
levy.
districts and the ability to levy funds on their own. And so I'm not quite sure how a countywide plan would look, and if it's even feasible, just given how every organization is structured differently.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking of the big stuff, right? Like not all the packs or anything. But
Oh,
just
yeah.
like the $1 million truck, like the bigger purchase, it might be some, because I mean, Lutsen Fire Department's very generous, and oftentimes there are, you know, hand-me-downs that other departments can use, and so that's advantageous for everybody. I'm just trying to get a better comprehensive understanding, and, you know, I don't know, like you said, you know, how, if it's even practical to have that sort of thing, but I appreciate the every other month.
If I can,
Is that for just the county, or is that?
that's the county and the
Okay.
state fire marshal's office.
Okay.
Yeah, and to add to the mutual aid thing, so say like Lutsen Resort or Caribou Highlands, you know, if Grand Marais come and they're gonna send the bare minimum, because you gotta protect your own as well. You can't empty your resources out to go help another person, so. And it's the same for us, like, we're not gonna send every truck that we have up the Gunflint.
Strategy.
Yep.
Commissioner Gamble?
Madam Chair, would you like to make a motion, given this is in your district?
I'm listening to the discussion first.
Yeah.
Administrator Drabble?
Just based on the discussion today, I just have a question for the board in that if it would be helpful for Brady and I to look at the impact on our fund balance and also have some discussion about the interest rate, since that came out of the board retreat, and bring back more information and put this potentially on the next board agenda for a decision once we have information related to what that percentage rate might look like and the impact on the fund balance. I don't know if the the board needs that information today to make the decision, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. I think that being in a better position, as our discussion has showed, that it helps us to be informed and to know where we're coming from, and that's part of stewardship responsibility. I would say relative to your request that, and the timeline, what was your anticipation following the anticipated approval by this board as far as placing that order?
The current contract that we have, I believe.
It's May 20th.
It's valid until the 20th of May.
So we'd have one meeting.
Yep, and so our goal would be to sign this contract after our next township meeting, which I believe is the 19th of May, so that we can send it in and remain at this pricing level. Given how much materials in the market are fluctuating on everything right now, there's no guarantee that this price will be available if we pass that May 20th date. And so our goal really was to more or less have a yay or nay on whether it's a loan that you would be willing to do. We don't need to know the exact rate or term at this time, just because I was made aware by Brady that the interest rates and everything else. I mean, I'm well aware of what's going on in the market. I looked at commercial loans, and I do it for my business all the time. Commercial loan rates have fluctuated from 4.5% to 8%. The goal here was, though, to at least have a yea or nay on the loan, percentage and term to come later, still with the hope that that rate would still be less than going out for a commercial bank loan.
Our next meeting then would be May 12th, and the township meeting is the 19th. Commissioner Sullivan?
So, Madam Chair, given every bit of information we've heard, the really good questions that have been asked, what I'd like to do is make a motion to approve the loan to the town of Lutsen for the purchase of a rescue truck with, on May 12th, a decision to be made on the rate and term.
Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, I would support that. I appreciate the fact that we're willing to take a look at this and revisit it. My reaction to that is, this is good, that's good, out of respect for where you're at in this process. If you're agreeable to looking at something that is both balancing our stewardship responsibility but wanting to meet your need. So representing, taxpayer dollars, we have that fiscal responsibility to them, and we have that commitment to our community to provide the equipment we need in order to provide the services we want to do. So if you're comfortable with the motion as presented, that we would have that discussion, I think that would demonstrate fiscal responsibility balanced with need to meet need. So I would support that motion in that context, with you having that understanding.
Yes, that would be great.
Yeah.
The motion, Commissioner Sullivan made a motion, and I second that. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Mills?
I guess where I was trying to go and failed was looking at our options with our fund balance and our needs as a community as a whole. I want to support this, and I want this to happen. What I'm trying to figure out is the best way to make this happen. And what I'm trying to understand is why we wouldn't just back their fund balance and they use their fund balance to buy it. The truck balance seems to be what that's for, and it's also kind of an emergency thing. So if an emergency comes up, yeah, we got your back. If you guys have a truck breakdown, we got that. But in the meanwhile, you have the money to do that. Versus, I don't know how it's going to put us as an organization without. This is not something that I was anticipating at all in our overall. And again, fully support, needs to happen. I understand. We want this to be not postponed because of the build time, and we want our first responders and fire departments out as fast as possible. We want that efficiency. So I'm just trying to understand all of that. So I would not want to say we approve this loan, but I would want to say we support this purchase. Don't know how yet.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would ask Brady, with what you know about fund balance, to Commissioner Mills' point, where would this put us? Does this make you uncomfortable or not? And that's predicated on the fact that you're monitoring this on a...
I have not looked at this.
Okay. All right. So to the motion that's made, I would say that, and to what you're recommending for us, that we would evaluate and know the particulars. If I were sitting where they're sitting, if we say, well, you use your money and just know we have your backs, if between whatever happens in 600 days, and we say, well, we had good intentions, but unfortunately, I would not feel comfortable with that. So I
It would
think.
require an MOU or something, you know.
Pardon? Yeah.
MOU.
And so I would say that, I mean, a business makes a decision if they feel that their investment is going to see a significant return on their investment, meaning that I'm going to borrow this money at this rate, at this term, and I know that I can use that money to generate or to provide the service that I need to do. That analysis contributes to my assurances that I'm making a good decision. And so in this situation, with the comments that have been made, we want to make this happen. How we make that happen, I think coming into that May 12th meeting, we can answer the question where we're at with our revenues and what we think is fair and equitable, balancing our fiscal responsibility with meeting community need. And if you're comfortable with that, then my recommendation would be that we would make the loan and take the uncertainty out of a changing environment, because we see how quickly that can change. That would be my trying to demonstrate both empathy for if I were sitting in your position and fiscal responsibility on the part of a decision maker for taxpayers. So,
If I may.
Yes.
At our annual meeting, when this was discussed, we, every year, have our annual meeting, the same day that we vote on new supervisors and clerk or treasurer, things like that. At that annual meeting, there were several citizens there, and we put this question out to everyone that was at that meeting. And it was the general consensus at that meeting as well that, yes, we have this truck fund, and we have that balance. And initially, our plan, when we discussed it, was to actually go half and half on this purchase. So do 200 or so, and then look for financing on the other 200. At that meeting, the citizens themselves and a few of us in that conversation came to the idea that it's better to have that emergent truck fund where it is, and instead of having to possibly fundraise in an emergency in the future. And so that was, when we're going to our constituents at the township level, that was what they wanted. And so that's kind of why we brought it the way we did. Understanding that, yes, we do have that truck fund, but it was also balancing what the citizens of Lutsen were looking for.
Commissioner Mills?
I am really curious about the state equipment contract, if we can tap into that somehow. I don't know if fire departments are allowed to do that, or if we can, but that's incredible savings when we're able to. And, yeah.
So that's part of the process that we did. Normally with a purchase of this amount, you would have to open it up for sealed bidding and go through a sealed bid process.
Well, the state has.
Yep.
Their contracts, which is not.
They have the ability to, at the township level, you have the ability to buy from any other municipality.
Okay.
You don't have to go through the sealed bid process then, because it's
Right.
And I don't know all of the legalese behind it. I just know that that's when we talked with Steve Fensky at Minnesota Association of Townships, he said that if you're purchasing from another municipality, that sealed bid process you don't have to go through. And so we looked into that. We looked at the state buying program, and I'm blanking on the name of it, but I know what you're talking about. And in this case, we went with another group that's very similar, has already done the bid process on exactly what we want, and that's Sourcewell. And so it's a variation. They're, how are they described on the website?
I'm kind of familiar with Sourcewell.
Yeah, and so more or less the same idea. They've already gone out and looked for the contracts and the bids. So that was part of what we've done.
Perfect, thank you.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this point, if the board is comfortable, if Commissioner Sullivan could restate her motion so we're clear on it, given all of the pieces that are moving here.
Surely. So my motion was to approve a loan to the town of Lutsen for the purchase of a rescue truck for use by the Lutsen Fire Department with the rate and term to be determined at our May 12th meeting.
And I will second that again. Okay. Agreeable? Okay, any further comments? I'll call for a vote unless there's any more comments. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. May 12th.
Perfect.
And so,
Thank you
Madam
very
Chair,
much,
then-
Commissioners.
Thank
We
you.
will-
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, so item number 9 is land services. Couple different updates we have.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. I have a couple of items for you from the April 8th Planning Commission meeting. The first one is a rezone request submitted by Howard Hedstrom. This is very similar to the rezone request that was approved last month. This is for the adjacent parcel immediately east of the parcel we spoke about that was off of the Gunflint Trail, north of Hedstrom's Lumber. It's the exact same request to rezone the property from light industrial to FAR 3. Mr. Hedstrom is exploring submitting a request to plat out the property for residential subdivision. And in that discussion with him, we were talking about the platted road going through that parcel we just rezoned, FAR 3. And if that road was to access a 20-acre light industrial lot, we would really have a lot of questions about the intensity of the road. You know, if that property is going to be light industrial, maybe that road needs to be more than just a residential road. And then he expressed, well, what if I, do the platting with that as well and turn that into residential housing? And said, well, yeah, we could, explore that option. So that is the option that he is now exploring. And so he has been working diligently on putting together a plat proposal for this property to include this 20-acre lot as well as the 40-acre lot. We did send out the public notices. We received no written correspondence, and there was no one at the public hearing to speak on the request from the public. And so this would effectively allow 4 5-acre lots to be added to that residential platted subdivision. And the light industrial zoning, as a reminder, that typically allows lots down to 2 acres in size. So this would actually be a little bit more restrictive to require 5-acre lots. And so I believe this is consistent with the rezone that was just done. Light industrial zoning right next to residential zoning is a little awkward if they were sharing the same road. I think it would lead to a lot of questions in the future. And with the lack of any opposition, the Planning Commission felt supportive of this request and unanimously recommended approval.
Questions or comments, Commissioner Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did receive some inquiries and just some comments from constituents that live in the area, and they're very pleased with this approach and are very supportive of it, those people that I spoke to. So I just wanted to share that.
Commissioner Mills?
Bravo on the 20, the additional 20, but is there still no, it's a lot more affordable to do a Rozo, isn't it?
Mr. Hedstrom has looked into that design. Again, he's weighing the different market metrics, and from his perspective, the 5-acre lots just have a different market value than smaller lots.
Tried and true.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution for the rezone of the 21.03 acres from light industrial to FAR 3 on parcel 53-235-2300.
Support?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. The second item that was reviewed at the Planning Commission on April 8th are proposed amendments to the Cook County Septic Ordinance that have been brought forward by the Land Services Department, specifically our Environmental Health Officer, Jesse Johnson. As he's been moving into this position, there's been fresh eyes on our septic ordinance as he's been taking the various certifications with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency regarding state septic regulations. And it's led us to find some inconsistencies with state rules as well as inconsistency with the actual application of our septic program. And so sometimes fresh eyes are a healthy practice. So a lot of these items I believe are housekeeping, but some of them also are addressing some issues that we've been running into that I believe will lead to better consistency in the application of these regulations and a little bit better transparency in our public process. One of the items, we did send out the notice of this to all the septic contractors in the county to gather any feedback that they might have. One septic contractor did provide written correspondence back to us and did not express opposition to these requests. If anything, they wanted more clarity in some of the definitions and terms that we have. But we had already publicly noticed this, so we'll kind of make a note of that for exploration in the future. The Planning Commission, when we discussed these items, did have some general conversation elements that we elaborated on. One of them was the topic of composting toilets. There's a term, public domain composting toilet, and it's an allowance in our ordinance that, when it was originally put in, it was designed to allow flexibility in what we call a composting toilet, that landowners could self-design a composting toilet. And I think there was an idea that we would have these, a list of what these like self-designed composting toilets would be. That list never came to fruition, and I think a part of that is just the nature of a self-designed composting toilet. It's a difficult bar to prove that it's meeting the intent of our septic regulations to protect public health and the environment and safety. So we don't have a list of these public domain composting toilets. So if someone comes to us and says, well, I'm just going to go to the bathroom and I'm going to mix up with some wood chips, and just like I do with my compost at home, at this point we say, no, that's not okay. But this kind of leads us to this openness that is really uncomfortable, especially when all other elements of the septic ordinance is very prescribed and highly designed and very specific for the gravity of the public health concerns and natural resource concerns that could be raised from these things not being managed correctly. So we are making the recommendation that we strike that public domain composting toilets, but we still allow patented composting systems. So this is not removing the opportunity for people to have composting systems. We know that they can work in Cook County if they're done correctly. And I think that there's exploration in the future to revisit this idea of the public domain composting toilets if we actually had a reasonable list that we felt truly was protective and in meeting the intent of our ordinance. So that is one of the discussion items we had at the Planning Commission, and you may have seen in your packets at the end of this item was the updated memo from Jesse Johnson that elaborated on some of these conversation topics at the Planning Commission. He's unable to join us today because he's at one of his septic trainings. But the other item that was discussed was the discussion of flow meters. This sounds like a big change, but it's actually not. When you have a pump on your septic tank pumping up to the mound, that essentially is a flow meter. It's keeping track. So this is more of a bit of a clerical change. I don't believe it has a really substantive change. And we made some changes to what we would call administrative variances. In the past, we had a little bit more open language than we were comfortable with that gave the environmental health officer potential discretion to allow variances from our septic regulations. And we had some pushback to be more lenient with that allowance than we were comfortable with. We feel that if there's a setback variance from a septic system to a lake, that really should be vetted through the Board of Adjustment, through our appropriate variance review process, and not up to an individual, and add more transparency to our public process. So that's probably one of the more substantive changes. We will probably see more variances at the Board of Adjustment because of a result of that, but we feel pretty strongly that that's a pretty important process. It might generate some complaints from contractors because it will delay projects if something comes up and they wanted more variance relief. But at the end of the day, we need to plan for that accordingly during the site design and permitting phase. And then lastly, a couple of years ago, there was a provision added to the septic ordinance that was trying to nudge contractors to move through projects clerically with their paperwork a little bit more timely. And so there's a 5 permit rule requirement that got added into the ordinance. We found that that really hasn't been applied very accurately with what it was intended, didn't really drive the results that were intended for. So we are striking that, and I believe that will be well received by the contractors. So again, no strong opposition to any of this. This we feel is adding more protection to our policies and processes and more alignment with the purposes and intent of the septic ordinance. And it was a unanimous recommended approval by the Planning Commission.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Neva, for the comprehensive overview. I take from that the responsibility that we have for compliance and a policy that is revisited so that it reflects what is current and what we know. It provides flexibility so we aren't driving an individual to a simple solution, a singular solution. But we need to create that flexibility within the context of what we know. I'll call it a term that gets abused, science-informed, so that homeowners realize that we're managing our responsibility, balancing that responsibility for the environment and providing options based upon the choice that a homeowner might want to use. The other thing is that policies and practices that seem to be archaic, or we have them in place but they aren't adhered to, they need to be evaluated so that, in fact, it is something that we can, with integrity, make sure that they're being complied with. So I appreciate the discussion that informs how we got where we're at today. So thank you.
You're welcome. Commissioner Mills?
Do you recall when the 5 permit rule was put in place?
I believe it was around 2022.
Yeah. So is there a plan to address the concern that made the 5 permit rule happen?
I think the hope is that when people engage with a septic contractor, they have a contract in place with them that outlines expectations, just like any other business agreement, and that it's up to those property owners to hold their contractor to those terms.
Because that's what they were asking the county to help with?
Our office receives multiple times throughout the year concerns from the public about why their permit is being delayed and why their contractor is not installing their septic system.
Yeah.
And we find that we've issued the permits. It's just we don't control when the private sector does their work.
Yeah.
And there's been cases of people waiting years for this work to happen.
3 years, yeah, for sure. Well, that's what I was just wondering, like, that was the reason for the 5 permit rule.
Yeah.
And now we're going to try eliminating the 5 permit rule again to try to address that same reason, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm just like, I don't know.
I
But
think
it's
there's-
worth going and trying again.
Yeah, it was I think if I had been director at the time, we probably wouldn't have moved forward with that. It's not a very
Sure.
reliable metric in an ordinance.
Yeah, I can certainly see the barriers, absolutely.
yeah.
I'm just trying to find a solution.
Yes, I mean, we try to be transparent with property owners and educate them in this process. But ultimately, property owners need to be responsible for their contractors and know that it's not the county necessarily slowing up these projects.
Yeah. Well, Yeah, I also just wanted to say I had a conversation with Neva about the public domain composting toilets because that's what my family has, and I feel very strongly about it. Everything Neva said is absolutely correct, though. It's difficult to manage, and to have consistency is near impossible. We don't have the staffing to go in and like stay on top of, and it could get way out of control. It could become unsafe. I can see that from personal experience very easily. So I still want to find a solution here, but until we do, I agree that we shouldn't allow it. But I will still work towards a solution. I've gotten to the point where, I'm looking at a microscope and looking at, the bacteria in compost. And so we'll get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, I don't know that I want to get to the bottom.
Not always.
Some people, they get a septic designer to do the work on their property and go through the process of getting it approved. They cannot control the weather, which the installers would. They can't control the weather or equipment breakdowns or anything like that. And we don't have an excessive numbers of contractors in this county. So if somebody had a brother-in-law who was a certified licensed installer in another county, if they got a permit from Cook County, could they have their brother-in-law come and install the system for them? I know no particular situation, but, it's like we have a shortage of installers. So,
State license. Right?
Yeah, installation still needs to be done by a licensed installer.
right. But even if they.
Anywhere in the state, though.
In the state.
Yeah, they don't have to reside in Cook County. It's a state certification.
Yeah.
But they still need to follow Cook County's septic
Yeah.
regulations.
Have license, will travel. Oh, huh.
Good idea.
Yeah, we have contractors from other counties that come up here regularly.
Commissioner Mills?
And then I didn't catch this before, but reading Jesse's kind of follow-up comments, it says during septic training, this is under the public
Yep.
domain area because that's, right, just caring about me, right? During septic training courses, instructors frequently advised against allowing composting toilets altogether. So that right there gives me a little pause for concern because I think they're very important. And I wish they were advocating for them rather than advising against. And so that gives me concern just about education and training at the state level and the direction or the view where things are going because boy, they're expensive when it's a full system and that's a huge barrier and that, we all know that. So that's why I'm trying to find other solutions, but the soils in Cook County make it hard for everything and so I don't know.
If I may address that point, I just want to be really clear that our office is supportive of composting toilets.
Yes.
We don't blindly accept the state's opinion on things.
Yeah.
These, especially the patented designs, we have much better confidence in the consistency of them fulfilling the role that they're supposed to do. So I don't want this to be any indication that we're headed towards a direction of, revoking those in the future.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't mean
Yeah,
to imply the
that's just-
county was.
No, it's-
I was more concerned about the state's
Yep.
view on that, and so I
Yep.
was hoping that they would be looking at other alternatives too, but they're narrowing there, so.
I think we just want the word choice,
Sure.
that depending on your land and what you can afford and all of that there's still a choice there. Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Again, appreciate the discussion, and I would agree with your point, Commissioner Mills, and it's something I was trying to affirm earlier, that we don't want regulatory agencies, be they at the local level or the state level or federal level, to take our options away if in fact our options meet the intent, which is to protect the environment through what we know and how we do that. And we can refine that if we learn different through our lived experience, but lobbyists have a reputation for sort of driving you into a certain corral, and we don't want to be found in a position where we're limiting people's freedoms, but we also have an obligation to the broader community to make sure that we're good stewards. So I would agree wholeheartedly. Let's not be limiting options, but let's make sure that our options are well-reasoned.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the proposed amendments to the Cook County Septic Ordinance number 58.
I'll support. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your work.
So, Human Services, approve the appointment of Christopher Schrupp as Chief Deputy Investigator.
Did you say Human Services?
Pardon?
Did you say
Yeah.
Human Services? Human Resources?
Human Resources.
Services?
Yeah, you did.
You do service.
Yeah, she did.
I do.
Yeah.
This would be a-
That's,
I only said it because when I officed up outside of the
was in Human
upstairs,
Services,
the stairwell, I can't think of words, everyone would stop thinking that I was Human Services, and they always
Oh.
wanted to either talk about their case or turn in their
Yeah.
Minnesota,
Oh.
their
Paperwork.
paperwork, their renewal. I'm like, nope, wrong office.
so I didn't mean to give
I
you a
don't
new
do that
title.
too anymore. Yeah. All right, good morning.
Morning.
So today I have one item for you, and it kind of goes off the tails of some of the stuff that occurred earlier this morning at the meeting. So Ben Hallberg took the oath of office. He will be serving as the appointed sheriff to fill out the remainder of Sheriff Eliason's term for 2026. So with all of the transitions that are occurring at the Sheriff's Department in the leadership roles, with Deputy Hallberg moving into the sheriff position, that will then leave a vacancy with our chief deputy role. And per state statute, we do need to request board approval for the appointment of a chief deputy. In talking with Deputy Hallberg and his intentions in filling that role as soon-to-be sheriff, he would like to request approval to appoint Deputy Christopher Schrupp to that role effective May 9th of 2026, in the line of when those transitions occur.
So before we begin the discussion on that, I'll read a little comment that's been provided. Chief Deputy Christopher Schrupp has served the Cook County Sheriff's Office with professionalism and steady leadership over his law enforcement career. After joining the department as a deputy in 2013, he has built a strong record of field experience, public safety service, and operational support across patrol and department functions. Chief Deputy Schrupp has recognized for his commitment to public safety and dedication to supporting other deputies in the field while helping ensure the Sheriff's Office continues to meet the evolving needs of the community. In his new role as Chief Deputy, he will help oversee daily operations of the Sheriff's Office, supporting patrol corrections coordination, interagency response efforts across Cook County. He has contributed to maintaining consistent service delivery in our geographical large and diverse county, where deputies routinely support emergency response, backcountry operations, and mutual aid with partner agencies. Gives us a little background on him. I'll open it up for discussion. Commissioner Gamble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Allison, maybe for the community, you could explain our policy in human resources relative to taking leaves of absence and still retaining position to be able to be reinstated. In other words, if somebody is reading our packet, they might not understand this if they haven't had previous experience. So just saying, what is the provision that we have so that when these changes are made like that, it is supported by our policy?
Right. That's a great question. And typically, we only see these requests of leave of absence in the Sheriff's Department, given the the kind of number of potentially appointed positions and the ever-changing parts and the fact that the county sheriff is an elected position. And there could be movement where if someone is not re-elected, that then would mean the sheriff, both the sheriff and the chief deputy, because the chief deputy is appointed by the sheriff, would then kind of no longer have a position. So the leaves of absence would allow them to move back, if there's a role for them, if there's an opening, would be able to revert them back into a position they previously held, like a deputy position, and therefore retain employment with the county at no fault of their own if they're not reelected. We just don't want to say that they're no longer hired. So with, I can't remember the specific state statute, but there is a specific state statute that we reference when a sheriff is appointed or elected to the position, because the state statute actually protects them in requesting that leave of absence to return to the former position, again, because of that elected status, and that may change. The chief deputy role is not covered by that state statute. However, we recognize the similarities with providing that opportunity to retain them as quality staff if they're not reappointed to a term. So we have included that in similar language without the specific state statute reference for our chief deputy positions. And County Attorney Peterson is so quick. It's State Statute 3.088.
Thank you.
Yes, too many numbers to remember off the top of the head.
And Madam Chair, if I can add to that too, this is a practice that's used throughout the state with a variety of different sheriff's offices.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the appointment and promotion of Chris Schrupp as Chief Deputy Investigator.
Support?
Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 12, administrator updates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a few brief updates. The first one is that construction continues to go well on our two capital projects, the transfer station in Grand Marais, as well as our law enforcement center. We're in the process of pouring concrete at both locations, and Brooke has assured me that things are moving forward very well. So that's great news. I would also like to thank Commissioner Sullivan and Engineer Haas for testifying before the Transportation Committee, and Senator Hochschild. I believe that was on the 22nd while I was out of the office last week, and they did an excellent job. So just wanted to make sure the community is aware that we continue to move forward with advocating for funding at the legislature, and I will keep the board apprised of any information that we receive as we move forward. The last update is that we have our Emergency Services Conference this week. It's on Friday and Saturday, and this is our 34th annual conference. Registration is still open, so if anyone is interested in attending. Some of the key topics are around Firewise, information and resources, suicide mental health training, tribal county Coast Guard, public health, information regarding 988, the Minnesota Air Rescue Team, and armed radio training as well. So a lot of great topics, so I encourage anyone to attend if you're available. That's what I have for today.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on then to commissioner meetings and updates. I will go ahead and start with an unusual situation that I had before me this week. I think, you know, in January we say we're going to be part of a board or commission and we assign each other and we know what's happening. Well, along the way, something pops up. And this is something that popped up this week from Superintendent Lindholm and Commissioner Sullivan for my attention to perhaps attend a meeting on the Iron Range. So I discussed it with Brady, and he said it's important to know what's going on because we do receive several $100,000 from range mining. And so I attended the meeting in Chisholm on Wednesday, and it's a group called RAMS, One Range, One Voice. And it was a presentation by just a general background of what is happening in mining. And I experienced that living in Grand Rapids in the year of 80 to 82 My husband was a real estate appraiser, and he was called over to the range to appraise people's homes because they had to leave, because they had no job. Right now, there are over 600 laid off. Their unemployment is going to be over within a couple weeks. And another company, a drill company, that employed 77 people is now closing. So those people will be looking for jobs also. So the discussion centered around be aware that the mining money may not be there for each of the school districts, the counties in the future. It may not hit us next year, but I think it's something that we need to consider when we talk about our budgeting and what we receive. They had a panel discussion with Mike Jukovich from the St. Louis County Commissioner, Pete Hudak, who's the mayor of Hibbing, and then Noel Schmidt, who was a superintendent. And the panel discussion really based around being aware in your county what could be happening. They had, and I won't throw out a lot of statistics, but the mining that's been sold, the millions of tons that have been sold, for instance, in 2025 was 120 million tons. They estimate 62 tons this year and 52 in 27. So it's going down. And what's happening in many areas, now you think, well, it's so easy because we have Lake Superior Harbor for them to send ore out. But there's competition with now trying to have a distribution in the area of lower Texas. So that throws a wrench into sending out the property that they have here. Also the fact that, well, it probably won't be in our lifetimes, but there will be a time when the mines will be depleted. So that's way off in the future. We don't have to consider that now. But one of the things that Commissioner Jukovich mentioned was the fact that counties need to dig into all kinds of resources to have money. And the fact that we have land that probably could be brought back onto the tax rolls. And of course, our land is very limited because, 92% of our land is already owned by the Fed and the state. So, anything that we can do to look at possibility of a distribution being less can be on our radar when we talk about our budgeting. So, I don't think Brady feels that we're going to lose anything right now for a couple of years, but it's almost 300,000. So that's a significant number.
That's the direct money
Yeah.
from production tax that offsets our levy, but we also get the taconite credit, homestead credit. It's up over $500 per household, and then the school gets a tremendous amount, 3/4 of the funding for that addition back in 1998, 97. That's probably coming to an end fairly soon, but that's a big chunk. Schroeder, that's what keeps their levy down. They get in the 60,000-ish range. And then we get some other smaller amounts besides the 300,000 production tax, but the rest of it isn't real significant. But then a lot of grants through my RRRB, so it's significant.
It's like a 10-year cycle, about 74, 76, 80, 82, 90. So it's about every 10-year cycle that this is happening. But the mining industry is changing quite a bit now in the future. Mr. Mills, did you have a question? You look concerned.
Yeah, I was just trying to get a grasp of a dollar amount and the impacts, and
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a direct relationship, so we can expect half of that. If you're saying the tonnage is about half, and when how long that takes to not get to us,
Yeah.
we don't know.
No.
Okay.
Not at this point.
It was well-attended, the room was full. So you know where Iron World is, this is a reclamation building behind that. And Ida Rukavina opened the meeting with, wise advice, and just take this into consideration. That's the first of 3 meetings. So that was the most convenient one for me to attend. And then also, I've been involved with selection at the ARDC building, and replacing a financial director and also a director for ARDC. We've made choices, now we just wait for acceptance. So we're hoping that that will work out. So I've been busy the last couple weeks. That's all I have. Anyone else to share their meetings or whatever? Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, after our last updates, I've had Taconite Harbor, I'm sorry, there was a preview for Taconite Harbor's kind of conclusion for that visioning process, and got a little sneak peek at 2 different kind of visions that were compiled by the group. I was a little surprised not to see any potential educational, and this is all on the website, you can go to the EDA's website, and then there's a TAC Harbor tab. So this was, there's 2 different ones that seem fairly similar. One has a more of an emphasis on the mixed use, and the other one is more on the industrial commercial side of things. But just what I've heard throughout the community is that there's a desire for some kind of higher educational, whether it be a tech school, trade school, something. But that wasn't part of that plan. But it was interesting to see and just hear a little bit about some of the restrictions. And of course, we don't own the land, right? We don't have any control over it, and there's new ownership, and we're not sure how that is going to affect things. So far, it's been a very amiable interaction. Maybe a little bit distant just because of that lack of ownership and don't want to commit to anything. But I try to remind myself and others that our involvement in this, it's been many years, maybe not for me as much, but it's largely involved kind of this broader outreach because of the lack of any developers stepping up or any proposals coming to Minnesota Power. They've tried to find somebody, and there haven't been any takes. So keep that in mind, just because if we do want something to happen, it might take public investment rather than just a private developer or a partnership or something creative. But so that was before the EDA meeting, and then at the EDA meeting, updates. And one that caught Commissioner Gamble's ear was regarding the golf course and the cost to hook up the irrigation to the Lutsen mountain line that comes from the lake is, I think, double of what was expected. And so the new plan is to go back to the old intake, still repairing the system, because that's what's needed for the sale, is a working system. And then if the new owner down the road decides we want to hook up into this other system, that's still an option. But that was part of the discussion with the Poplar River Watershed District too, is just allowing for that. So I was pretty concerned initially, but I was comforted to hear there's, the plan B, of course. And then also, as time goes on here, the EDA's operating funds or funds for the golf course are diminishing. But if we get into the golf season, then before the right of first refusal is received, then there will be income, there will be revenue, and that would be advantageous for the EDA and the community. But we also don't want to delay the sale by any means, so it's a bit of a dance. And so I asked, are we gonna make it? And it was a careful yes, but it's tight, and we'll just see when that right of first refusal comes in and reevaluate there, so. I think that was all I wanted to share for today.
Has there been a date set for public comment for Tag Harbor?
Let's see here. Oh, yeah, well, that's a good question, good point. There's also, we're also filing for an extension for the grant, just because we don't want to rush things at the end here, but that too will be a close call for closing out that grant. And so, it looks like the 15th, 16th was kind of the idea. Is that what you have too? Yeah. But I don't have an invite yet. The EDA meeting is the 16th. Stantec's hope was to have a public meeting the 15th to get public input, compile that, and then present it to the EDA on the 16th. And then the grant needs to be completed, I believe, by the 30th. And so we're just going to ask for like a 30-day extension, just so it's not so compressed there. But
That's of May, because May 15th is a Friday and May 16th.
June, I'm sorry, June.
Oh, June,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
June 15th?
Oh, I wasn't aware of that, but on our timeline there, it looks like there's a public meeting on, June, maybe that's what that is.
Yep, at the Schroeder
Town Hall, 4 to 7.
June 15th.
Yep. I didn't have an invite or that graphic, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Can I crash the party?
I think all people, it's public, yeah, so all looking for.
So we don't have to wait for an invite?
No.
No.
I'm sure it'll be broadcasted, and
Okay.
the idea is to get as many eyes on the visions as possible, right? Get as much feedback as possible. And this is not like, this isn't a master plan or anything
No,
like that,
no.
This is all just conceptual, and
Yeah.
so, yeah.
So that's
Step by
Schroeder
step.
Town Hall at 7?
4 to 7.
4 to 7. Okay. Our calendars get really busy, so.
Yeah.
Have a placeholder. Okay, good. Thanks on that. Anyone else? Commissioner Gamble?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. To your discussion about the meeting that you attended up in the Iron Range, I'm wondering if it would be advisable, when it comes to budgeting and having things on the radar, that if Brady, knowing the financial implications, if the nature of the discussion and the points that were made could help Brady in making some projections so that we as commissioners could look at what it would be if they're saying that we're 1/3 of what production has been. If you can extrapolate that, if that formula is consistent to what 1/3 would look like in the distribution of those funds and the year that they're projecting that to be. It's so that it's on our radar and aware of the impacts of that. So that would be helpful if we could do that. Brady doesn't have too much on his plate. Then the other thing, as far as an update, we did have, and Commissioner Sullivan had attended a statewide government update relative to the budget a week or so ago, and there was then AMC held a federal government update on April 24th. Two consultants that presented that work in Washington, and one of the statements was made that there's no question that the lens of smaller government is of concern to federal representatives. The direction seems to be going to favoring grants to states rather than counties, especially with transportation, which is, something that we've been looking at. But it just being aware. The other thing they pointed out in the House, federal House, 13.3% of all of the representatives are up for re-election, and in the Senate, 33.3% are up for re-election. Looking at what they are aware of based upon what proposals relative to the budget, the Department of Defense, there's a proposed 2% increase, and I understand statistics are sometimes hard to swallow when you're communicating, but it does give you a sense. If this were in a graph form, you could see where they're prioritizing tax dollars be spent. Department of Transportation, 62.2% increase in the budget. Environmental Protection Agency, 52% cut. Department of Labor, 25.9% reduction. This was proposed last year and it did not pass. Department of Education, a 2.9% reduction. Department of Veterans Affairs, 7.7% increase. So a full report on that was going to be provided, but when we're making decisions when we reference lens, if we look at things through the lens on the state level, we look at things through the lens on the federal level, it sort of helps us know what are we seeing. And it is the awareness of these things, much like what you referenced in the meeting that you attended, Commissioner Starley, is that we need to have these things on our radar. So with a changing environment, then decisions we make need to be in the context of understanding and prioritizing and allocating the resources that are dwindling in some areas, and aware of resources that might be increasing in some areas, but they're restricted in nature and how they get applied. So anyway.
What, we haven't talked about weapons manufacturing at Tech Harbor, but that's,
Yeah.
sounds like that might be the most viable.
Make them out of iron ore.
Yeah.
That's right.
Anyone else? Commissioner Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Both Commissioner Gamble and I attended the most recent HRA meeting and just talked a little bit about Norriscogan, which is over on the eastern side of Grand Marais. 12 units will be available. The first 2 are going to go under construction, so that was really good to hear. And that is one of those places where IRRR money really helped, $350,000 for infrastructure. So glad that we have some funding available and in our hands right now. We also talked a little bit about the Duval property, which is the old Tom Taboda area on 61. That has been delayed, and one thing that was pointed out is that there is funding they have already received that will go away if nothing happens there by January of 2028. So we'll keep an eye on that. And then we talked about the Housing Trust Fund, kind of waiting to hear back from the County Attorney's Office, but that'll be another mechanism where we can gain funds and utilize those funds to improve the opportunities for housing in Cook County. We had an Airport Advisory Commission meeting and talked a little bit about budgeting, looking at not only equipment over the next 20 years. We only have 4 pieces of equipment. It's not quite like the Highway Department, but how we want to approach that. And then also approach the capital improvement plan in light of the master plan that's been approved by the FAA. So we'll be spending a lot of time, and I imagine that Brady will be working with some of our members of our engineering firm as well as the airport manager to look at that capital improvement plan and make some tweaks and fine-tune that. We also talked about signage. If you have been out on Devil Track Road and gone up towards the airport signs are not legible. They have been damaged quite severely by the extreme weather that they have. They were signs that were paid for by the FAA back in 2015 and 2018. And so we're looking at making smaller, more affordable signs, doing them in-house by the county, and just making sure that we get something that can be read. Gunflint Ranger Station had their annual meeting up the trail last Thursday and talked a little bit about their construction on U.S. Forest Service roads that is planned for this summer, and also for the prescribed burns that are going to be along the Gunflint Trail. They had a very, very good turnout. I imagine that some of their construction plans for roads are delayed because some of their roads have washed out in the last week. since we had that meeting, and so they're going to have a lot of additional work to complete over at least the immediate future. And lastly, AMC had their solid waste work group, which I'm a part of. We have made a decision to meet less frequently. We've been really working hard, meeting monthly to try to bring forward things through the Environment and Natural Resources Policy Committee. That is not a priority currently for the legislature. So we are going to meet either quarterly or maybe every couple of months, but continue with our work looking at e-batteries, e-waste, and ways that counties can work together, because there's a potential all landfills will be closed in Minnesota in the very near future, and that's going to have a huge impact for us. One real benefit of attending that group is I've become much more aware of grants that are available through the MPCA, and so I'm going to be scheduling a meeting with Dustin Hanson with North Shore Waste to talk about, once all our improvements are made at the transfer station, what is the next step and what funds can we apply for or grants can we apply for to make sure that it's not all coming back to the taxpayers. So we will be working on that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mills?
I was wondering if it could be appropriate or helpful if we had a committee of the whole to dig in a little bit more with IRRR and just mining tax. I don't know if Assessor Thompson can give us some perspective, or if we can learn more through that, or if it's too soon and too reactionary. But I just, realized I don't actually know how IRRB is funded exactly, or what that mechanism is, and what all of our mining dependencies are. That could be really helpful, but no emergency. Just thought it could be.
Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you. To that point, I mean, any funding mechanism that we have to understand those in present context would be beneficial. When you look at where money, we talk about PILT often, and we talk secure rural schools. That came in, and Brady had said we usually see that. We're just waiting to find out, and then we did get word that it's coming in. But understanding those funding sources and where they're at right now, and whether they'll be constant. IRRB, I think that the inception of that, when there was monies that were designated and handled in the cities, that legislators wanted to be able to take some of the revenues that were generated through the mining up here and put them in a funding mechanism that we could control for local things, much like what happens in the cities, maybe through the Metropolitan Council. And so if you look at their structure and how those things are advocated for in their distribution, Cook County, which is not a mining community per se, similar to the Iron Range area, gets more allocation than counties that have mines in their backyards. And so when we see those dollars distributed, we are benefiters of that. If you want to look historically at the amount of money that we've received from IRRB, it is amazing. That fund, in its inception, was intended to be, we talked about having, funding sources and reserve funds and things. If mining goes away, families that have made their livelihood off mining need to have something to fall back on, and that would be like their workman's comp. And so to the extent that we're getting monies that are there to protect families that lose their livelihood, that's huge. But again, understanding that, and I've looked at that relative to Superior National Golf Course. How much money have we seen that has come from IRRB? And in talking to them, we've had 4 grants that are significant, and wanting to understand what the request was and what the response was in regard to that request coming relative to the golf course. Anyway.
Administrator Treble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really like that idea of having this as a future COW agenda item. I think it might be best to wait until the legislative session is done, because we'll have some impacts potentially to PHHS that then we could include in the formula. I also think that having that information can help to inform how we address fund balance in the future. So as we look at the loan policy that I had mentioned, Brady and I will be working on updating, I mentioned earlier, and then just as we have discussions around fund balance, I think having that, that view of what the future is bringing us, I think would be helpful. So I think that's a great idea. I would just recommend that we look at perhaps June or July for that discussion.
And we could work together on contacting Commissioner Rukavina, and then she would know who would be the most appropriate person that would come. Okay. Commissioner Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to kind of reiterate, we don't have an active mine, but we have had mining in Cook County. That's why we're part of the taconite tax relief area. And the purpose of the funding is to help diversify the economy. And that is still something that we need here in Cook County, as well as other parts of the IRRR area, which is about 13,000 square miles. It's huge. But that is still their primary mission, and certainly we can hope to benefit from that in the future.
Okay. So moving on, just for upcoming meetings and events, we have our Budget and Facility Advisory Committee this afternoon at 3 o'clock. Our next board meeting will be Tuesday, May 12th. Also in the packet, we have the HR Board Report on staffing changes, and then we have the lodging tax comparison through February. And before I adjourn, we have elections coming up, and they do ask that candidates declare their choices. We have 3 districts of candidates in our board here. We have to declare starting May 19th through June 2nd. So it's a very short time. And we're waiting for the window to get open so that people can have early voting too. So anyway, I will ask each of the districts who are up for re-election, unless Brady had something to add. No, okay. Each of the districts to declare your choices. So I'll start with Commissioner Mills.
I'm planning on running again.
Okay. Commissioner White?
I'm on. I'm going for it.
And I have decided that after 15 years of public service, I will not be re-upping as commissioner. I feel that 3 years as supervisor, and I sat over there many times. When I became a supervisor, I thought, well, this isn't too hard because we take care of small, township events. And then we had the proposal of, we need to enlarge and make our fire hall and community center bigger. So I spent the whole time working on that, which really prepared me for bigger decisions here. So that was enjoyable too. So I think it's time to wind down and do other things. So
That's
yeah,
very big news, and I respect your decision, of course, but it makes me a little nervous, just the transitions, right?
I'm hoping for, good candidates with a new eye on looking at things and a perspective of working with the whole group as I have enjoyed working with you, because it doesn't take one, it takes 5 to decide, and along with our administrator and our attorney and Brady, there's a lot of interesting choices have been made in the past, and we move forward with a lot of, work with capital improvement and all those topics. So that person will, I know, do well because you welcome them.
Okay, that's a bold statement.
Especially you.
We'll see.
There being no other further business, we are adjourned.
It's the restroom, and then
Yeah.
You won't have a
then I'm
spare
free. But I was
moment
going
once
to
you're
ask
not here. You'll be doing
virtual
Oh,
has to be in the courthouse. So.
You have time to stay and write the thank you
The budget
notes.
and facility.